You're listening to the 49 Carats Podcast, a 49ers Goldmine production with Stephanie Sanchez.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the 49 Carats Podcast. I'm your host, Steph. It is Monday, December 9th, and we are enjoying a Victory Monday. How long has it been since we've said that? I'm so glad to be back here in a good mood with my Monday co-host, Weston. Weston, I got to imagine, like, you're elated.
I am, but I'm confused. I have so many emotions.
Yes,
I'm just very confused. What was once excitement turned into going down a really dark alley, just thinking about the 2024 season as a whole. But yeah, of course, like, I don't even know if we have enough time to talk about all the good stuff from yesterday, but we'll cram it in.
We'll try. There is a lot to talk about, and I agree. I think it is very confusing. I often equate the 49ers to a toxic relationship because we were mad, we were angry. They changed their ways, but it's only been a couple weeks. So is this going to last, or I don't know. You never know with this team what version of them you're going to get. But yeah, it definitely reminds me of a toxic relationship. Now, we want to start this show off by talking about something that just came in about an hour ago from Deebo Samuel. Not really specifically to this game, but just more so his production overall in the last few weeks. Obviously, there's been a lot of discussion around that as of late. And so he took to Twitter and said, "Not struggling at all, just not getting the ball," with several exclamation points, an emoji, followed by another tweet that says, "Just because I voice my opinions mean I'm hating on any of my teammates, be for real." And I think he doesn't mean he's hating on his teammates. So this is an interesting reaction from Deebo. My first reaction to this, Weston, was, man, he saw how many targets and how much manufactured touches George Kittle got after saying that he was open, he didn't really get the ball, didn't have an explanation for it. Maybe Deebo's just trying to find some of that same juju going into this game against the Rams.
Yes, I mean that's the first thing I thought of, and this is an old usage of the squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? And that's kind of what Kittle was last week, for the first time like ever that I can remember those words coming out of George Kittle's mouth. And then you see it here with Deebo. I'm kind of indifferent on this. I think the obvious statement is like, well, dude, my eyes tell me you have been struggling, right? And it's been a struggle this year. And I know my eyes aren't alone. So let's not just blame this. I feel like, and we've talked about it, Deebo's getting a lot of forced usage right now, like forcing the issue. And then I would argue it's not the way that I would be using Deebo Samuel right now. Too much east-west, not enough north-south, if you're asking me. But that being said, it just feels a little off color in the sense of like, but dude, it's been the struggle bus all year long for you. It's not just about the targets, the touches, anything along those lines.
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking about getting the ball and that being the reason, looking at Sunday's game alone, he got the ball the same amount of times as George Kittle did. In fact, he touched the ball one more time than Juwan Jennings. He had the same amount as Juwan Jennings as far as opportunities, one less than Kittle. He had 2 catches and 5 carries in this game for a total of 35 yards from scrimmage. So, yeah, I have a hard time thinking that it is the lack of him getting the ball. He is getting the ball, but I do agree. I think there is there's obviously more that can be done to get better quality touches for Deebo Samuel. And I think what we're seeing is a lot of the same thing, the end arounds, much of which have not worked for some time. I mean, even when George Kittle was kind of but just mentioned how in week 13 he didn't get any targets really, despite being open. In week 14 against the Bears, you saw like 3 screens to Kittle. Yeah. When had we seen that all season, right? So you're right. Maybe him being the squeaky wheel will get him more opportunities and more, I guess, like different opportunities going into this week, some that could help him out to get better production. Because, yeah, I do think using him the same way is kind of a disservice to him. Not here to argue whether he's washed or not, like maybe he has lost a step, but I would also want to see him in more favorable situations that work towards his skill set.
Yeah. The only way I know how to explain it is enough with the East and West. The reality is that never really worked at all anyway for Debo, right? Like what worked for him was look what he does on kickoff return, right? What he's done so far. That's getting the ball and getting north, right? And he is great at making people miss at that point, running over somebody the way he's built when he gets a little head of steam. I just think, like, I want to see, yes, he had one. They just weren't able to do much with it. There wasn't a great execution on the play anyway, but more of the screen game, right? The quick hit, let him just get up north, make a guy miss, have one blocker in front of him, or, the drags across the field, the short ones, 5, 7, 10 yards deep max, where he's running with a full head of steam and gets the ball going. That's where Debo Samuel is special. If you go back and look at all the things that he's ever done, it's never been about east-west. It's about just getting north immediately. Even in the run game, when he was being used as a running back, he would just one cut and go. And now he's like kind of like dancing around behind this like shoddy line and trying to figure it out. And I'm not rushing to Debo Samuel's defense in this instance, right? Like I definitely think there are things he could be doing differently, more attitude and demeanor, and things like this that don't help his case. But I am not of the school of thought that thinks he is washed. I just, like we all suffer. Like this dude's been playing a few years in the NFL. He plays a physical brand of football. Like we knew this would catch up to him, but there's still ways to maximize his usage and take advantage of it. You mentioned, screen games with Kittle and everything like that. Like I think this is all a ploy. This is Debo just always needs to be front and center, public face. You know what I mean? Like I think he welcomes the hatred. He does not mind, does not care, is not losing any sleep. But yeah, let's throw a little smoke out there and see if it creates fire.
It just, I guess, like obviously he's hearing the discourse around his lack of production, and it's maybe eating away at him, right?
Sure.
And again, I'll keep mentioning it. Ever since he told Jake Moody to lock in, like. That's when it really got more eyes on it and more attention, because then we're seeing, well, dude, like you don't look very locked in yourself. So it's not going to stop really until he has one of those vintage Debo Samuel-like games where he takes over. And hey, look, I mean, he has an opportunity on Thursday night against the Rams, a team he has gone off against in the past. And the thing is, we might see him as more of a running back in this game, which if used in the right way, again, like more north-south, like you're saying, Weston, it could be a good thing for him. I agree. Like that's the baffling thing. He has these kick returns, and he didn't return any on Sunday, but when he has had those opportunities, like he looks spry. He looks like his old self, right? Like he has a lot of energy, especially the ones coming out of halftime, like always for some reason, like he's ready to go. So there's something still there. So hopefully we get to see a little more of that come Thursday, because I mean, they're going to need him now a little bit more with the injury to Isaac Guerrero. So we'll have to wait and see. But I mean, that's the thing on Debo, and that's the thing with this whole team being as deep as it is. You have a lot of mouths to feed. And maybe this week will be Debo's week.
I liken it to probably not, and I'm sure we're going to talk about this stuff, but one of the things that I think was like very obvious to me is that in this game this weekend, it was about the play call, not the player, if that makes sense, right? And I'm not saying it was about Kyle Shanahan versus Brock Purdy or George Kittle or Jawan Jennings, but even on some of those outside the screens that are obviously design plays, right, to go to a number in that position, a lot of kills, big plays, just another option in the route tree, right? Like that's just the way it was, and you take what the defense gives you and look. And that's always been the problem when you say there's only Love her. When there's only one ball to feed all of these mouths when all is said and done, like sometimes you get locked into, BA hasn't had a big game in a while. I got to feed him. No, like this system is at its best when this is the play. I promise you somebody will be open. Let's give the quarterback enough time to get through the progression, and somebody's going to have a big game. It's just the way it's going to be, right? And it might vary from game to game who's got the big game. It's not just feed 1, feed 11, feed 85. It's go eat, go get open, and you will eat today.
The important thing is that the 49ers won. So, Deebo may be upset about his lack of production, or in his eyes, what he deems not getting the ball. But the important thing is that the team won. So we're going to talk more about that going forward, yes. Weston, and let's relish in it because, it's been a while. It's been a while since we've talked about a win. And I guess what I'm trying to figure out, and I'm sure you are, and a lot of listeners, viewers are as well, is this for real? Like, is this just a flash in the pan for the 49ers, the 2024 49ers? Or is this something that they can actually build on going forward? I mean, I know the injuries don't seem to stop for this team. That definitely makes it a challenge for them. But this, even with the injuries, several players being out, this is the most cohesive I've seen this team look all season, and it's not even close. Like they played full 4 quarters looking like a good team.
Yeah. This is tough because this is where you sit. The record says it's not sustainable, right? Like they're not going to repeat this performance. But it's hard to argue with what you saw. And I know a lot of people, and myself included, would say, okay, let's pump the brakes here on expectations. This was the Chicago Bears, who have now lost 7 consecutive football games, right? A reeling not an untalented football team, a reeling football team. Just went through changing head coaches in the middle of the season for the first time in history. I found that to be fascinating when you were learning about that during the game. But it's not like they beat a 9-loss team 21-17 or 17-14. I mean, they beat them by 4 scores in the NFL. Like that's a big deal. Like that's still very difficult to do, even to the poor, the poverty-strucken teams in this league. But they dug a deep hole for themselves. So really, honestly, does it matter if they play? I don't think it matters if they play this way the rest of the year. I still think they fall short. But what I am hoping, at the very least, is it is that reminder that, oh yeah, like we are a team that is supposed to be feared. We are the team that won the game sometimes before we got off the bus, and that they haven't earned that right to think that way. But it is a nice little reminder of like, oh, this is what it feels like, and this is what we used to do to teams week in and week out. Like, do you remember, I think it was a stretch in the 2022 season where every team except the Kansas City Chiefs, after they played the San Francisco 49ers, lost the next game, regardless of the outcome. And I think the Chiefs, the only reason why they didn't fall victim to that was because they had a bye week the following week or whatever it was, right? So they didn't fall victim to it. But every other team, like, that's the expectation for this. And that's what they looked like, that version of the San Francisco 49ers on Sunday. To your initial question, and I know I'm rambling, it's just in my excitement, is I'm going to choose to pause on the full-fledged excitement of like, oh, maybe they make a little run in the back half of this year. This is just 1 week. I'll take it for what it was, but just a very nice reminder after 3 consecutive 2 whippings to be like, okay, this team can still play this game.
You know, funny enough, if the 49ers win out, they have a 59% chance of making the playoffs, which is a pretty decent chance. Although I think what we've been saying for some weeks now, and that, was the frustration of this team early in the season, is that they lost the right to control their own destiny. Like now they're at the hands of not just themselves having to win out, but also other teams in the NFC losing games. And as we know, like that's difficult to do. This past weekend, we were rooting for the Bills to beat the Rams and the Seahawks to lose, right, against the Cardinals. That didn't happen, right? So despite the 49ers winning, they didn't make any progress towards, getting any closer to being a playoff team. So that's what we're saying. That was the big frustration of this team digging themselves into a hole early in the season. And I guess like after the game, Kyle Shanahan, mentioned that a couple of players, notably Diamador Lenore, Brock Purdy, spoke to the team Saturday, which is not something that's very common, especially I think for those two guys to do. And I guess it was at the request of Kyle Shanahan, but of course, both of those guys were very much willing to do it. Where was that like a couple weeks ago?
Yeah.
I would have loved the team speech, like let's huddle up, because like we knew we did not need those 2 losses against the Packers and the Bills to know that this team was heading nowhere fast.
Yeah.
That like we saw all the signs for weeks. They were the ones that didn't see it right away and kept feeding us the, oh, well, we've been here before, so we can do it again. They were drinking the Kool-Aid on themselves. And, ultimately, I think now going into week 13 is when they had this speech. I think it's too little too late. So while I'm very appreciative of this team looking like themselves, in a way, kind of validating what we knew this team is, I'm just disappointed, though. It's not. I don't know. They missed the mark a little bit on the timing of all of it, and I just think the urgency is way too late for me.
Yeah, too little, too late. I mean, I don't know what else to say. Now, let's say they've strung together another performance like this on Thursday night, right, and beat the Rams. Then you feel like, okay, the early half of the season was just a squandered opportunity for all involved, right? And do you take the injuries out of the equation? Like, feels like our biggest obstacle was ourselves as a team. You know what I mean? And that's like a frustrating feeling. I feel like. So while I will always root for my San Francisco 49ers to win, I do feel like the win yesterday is almost a disservice to some of our hopes and beliefs, because I still think they'll come up short, regardless of what the chances are, because they have to rely on too many other factors. It's not just their own play and their own results. And when you can only control so much, chances are the rest of it's not going to fall your way. So it does. Yeah. It's, you wish that you saw this, and they had plenty of opportunities and plenty beatable opponents in front of them to have that get right game, and they just never did.
Yep. And even then, like, I think that's why it's totally fair to look at this win against the Bears and still have some skepticism of this being anything, because I think they've beaten bad teams. Like, bad teams are the only teams they've beaten this season.
Yeah. And that's
And while I think the only thing we could hang on to from this win, like I said, is the fact that it looked more put together than it did even in those wins. Like, even in those wins, I was like, oh, like they barely made it, right? And they won through the skin of their teeth, and they survived like a special teams disaster, or the defense giving up points there at the end. Oh, they squeezed it in. Now, this time it was a dominant performance, right? So that I do feel good about. But anything can happen on Thursday. I understand that. You're playing the Rams, who look phenomenal right now.
Look great offensively. They look great.
And they really took it to the Bills, and that got close at the end. But divisional games are weird, so I do think anything can happen. Thursday night game, short week. I'm still like, to me, in my mind, there's still no way this team beats the Lions, in my mind. So I still have some, I guess, doubts of what this team could be. But at the same time, it was good to just feel the win again, feel a dominant performance, and not one that's like teetering. it was good to just have that for the sake of pride, I think, for these players.
Totally. Pride is definitely on the line on the back half of this season. Contracts are on the line in the back half of the season. Roster spots, the whole nine. It's hard. I agree with you, Steph. Right? Like I look at this and say, still, I don't know how confident I feel about the team collectively with what the knowledge we have based on the 2024 season is beating the Lions, the Eagles, even getting another crack at the Vikings because what their defense can do to some offenses. But when you watch who they played yesterday, regardless of who they played, it looked really easy. Like I don't know how else it looks like. The game just looked easy, and if
for the first
you're
time,
hard to beat, you know, when you what have we talked about? What has been the biggest problem all year long? Execution, completing it, getting into the end zone when you get red zone opportunities, and all of those things were done and done well yesterday. Good offensive line play, good defensive line play, right? I mean, everything that we pointed to as a struggle, it all looked good, all looked clean. And then look how easy the outcome. I mean, when was the last time you felt going into halftime that the game was a lock for the San Francisco 49ers? Like, I wasn't even worried about them giving up a second half run. I was like, I think they did enough that all they needed to do is get a couple first downs in the second half. And they'll be all right. It was weird, just weird.
A lot of the things that they've struggled with, not all of them, but a lot of the things that they've struggled with this year looked to be improved in this game. For one, like explosives, like they had 9 plays from scrimmage go for 20 or more yards, and that's the third time under Kyle Shanahan that they've done that. One of the other times was last season, actually, against the Seahawks, and then the other time was in 2019 against the Saints. That was a great game. But anyway, like, yeah, we saw a lot of good things that we hadn't seen in a while. Again, even in the wins, 5 of 6 in the red zone. That first opening drive was incredible. That was the best opening drive I've seen all season, and it was kind of sad in a way because it's like, guys, like we're in week 14, and like, we could have been doing this whole time. Like,
yeah.
And the thing that's cool about it too is that they did this even with some of the injuries. Like Trent Williams not there, Nick Bosa still not playing, right? Ben Barch exited this game with an injury, and they still looked like a good team, the same team that's very much capable of beating pretty much anyone if they play this way.
Yes.
Now, are they going to get knocked off from this path when they actually play a good team like they are going to on Thursday? That is yet to be seen. But I do think that this momentum and this feeling of, wow, like we could actually do it if we apply ourselves to it, like that, I think can go a long way, because I feel like this game wasn't just a statement for, you know, everything else, everyone else. It was a statement, I think, for themselves.
Yeah, I'd agree. I'm in like no better place than when we started and when I went to bed last night, and just this hole of like, this season just feels like such an enigma. Like this team is third overall defensively in total yards allowed per game, third overall in passing yards allowed per game, top 11 or 12 in rushing yards allowed per game, but yet they're in the bottom half of the league of points allowed per game. And then offensively, like they're still moving the ball the same way. I mean, this team has, what was it? Their point differential is even. Yeah. And yet they're under 500 as a team. Like that's not abnormal, but it's certainly not normal, right? Like there's just all these things that if you looked at, you'd be like, God, this team should be at least 2 to 3 games above 500 for the season. And you're just not. And then it's like performances like yesterday from the people that it came from gives you hope for beyond 2024 that this really was just like an anomaly. You know what I mean? Like we're not talking about BA or Debo. We're talking about Kittle, Jennings game yesterday, Garendo, right? Like, and we know we'll get CMC back, like other things. It's like, wow, are we really even worried about 2025? Like, I feel like, tell me how this team's not supposed to compete. Problem is we're still lurking in the back quarter of 2024, and I just want it to be over. if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I do agree with that. It's like the fact that they won, I think, gave us that hope again, even if it's false hope. Like
Ugh.
we're gonna hang on to that just because like we're
Yeah.
fans of the team. We want them to be good. Like, of course, we want them to make the playoffs. And yeah, it is a little annoying at this point in the
Crazy.
season because I think like we do know how it's going to end. But yeah.
Yeah.
But on that note, like all the performances from yesterday's game, there's a lot to talk about. So let's just get right into nominees for 49K Player of the Week. It's been a while since we've been excited to talk about nominees because I think this week we have a healthy list of them. So I'm gonna let you go first, Weston.
I can confidently say that I have more than one. That's been different than what it's been.
Absolutely.
We always knew that the shows were harder after
When
the
they
loss.
lose, yep.
I'm going to lead us off with the San Francisco 49ers' very own national treasure of number 85, George Kittle. 6 for 151. Yes, no, he did not get in the end zone, but it was 6 catches on 6 targets. And it was just, they were all George Kittle-esque, right?
Yeah.
Yak, running over dudes, fighting for the extra yards. It was just literally like vintage 2018, 2020, 2021 George Kittle, or not even 21, injured. Just when he's just a beast with the ball in his hands. The truth is he's the biggest mismatch that the San Francisco 49ers offer right now on the
Easily.
offense side of the ball.
Oh, yeah.
Doesn't matter who's up against him. He's better. He's better. He's stronger. He's physical. He's smarter. He's all of the boxes that you want to check. God, it was just awesome. And then sad at the same guard because you're like, how much longer are you going to do this? Please don't leave. Please be part of like the next 2 to 3 years while we're still figuring out who may ever one day fill your shoes. But it was beautiful. It was just quintessential George Kittle game.
Yeah, it was peak George Kittle.
Yep.
And I think for how large he is, like tight end, right? 250 plus pounds, however much he is, right? He's so good in open space. And yeah, 151 yards and 68% of those came after the catch, right? So like with those screens, he was moving and he does this thing where his like arms like go like this because he needs that momentum, right?
Yeah.
to move, but he does it and it's just it's him. It's what he's been doing, right, for this team. I agree. He is the biggest mismatch. I don't care who you line him up against. He's always going to be the best mismatch. If you ask a defense, who are you most concerned with today? I guarantee they would all say George Kittle.
Yeah.
So I think the 49ers need to lean into that more because I think seeing week 14, this game against the Bears, how that went when you leaned into it, when you manufactured touches for him, you see how that went. Like you were rewarded heavily.
Yeah.
So yeah, I thought that was great. 5 games in his career with 150 more yards, same as Travis Kelce, and only behind Shannon Sharp, who had 6. So I don't know. I think he can get that number 6 and tie Shannon Sharp in his career. And who knows, maybe before the season ends, if, like I say, you lean in to George Kittle being your best pass catcher by far on this team right now. Also, one more thing. Also, the 3rd tight end all time with 500 plus catches and 7,000 plus receiving yards in first 8 seasons. Gates and Kelce are the other 2. And Weston, he was also nominated for FedEx Air and Ground Player of the Week. So it's only right we nominated him.
Well, he's damn sure being nominated for 49K Player of the Week, The other thing that I think is lost in this is like, yes, the production is fantastic. But how do you keep a player involved in the game for all 60 minutes? You got to get them involved. They have to, especially someone like George Kittle, has got to touch the football. When he's touching the ball, I promise you, on the next 3-4 consecutive plays where you're asking him to block a defensive end or a blitzing linebacker or something, he's going to do it with nothing but happiness, right? And nothing with, I want to destroy that man across the line from me. Like you are getting a better version of George Kittle, the football player, when you have him involved in the passing game. It's that simple.
Yep. Great nominee for this week. Like I said, we've got some more as well. I'm going to go with the other best pass catcher for the 49ers this season. That has been Jauan Jennings. 7 catches, 90 receiving yards, 2 tutties, 30% target share in this game. 6 of his targets, as KP tweeted today, 6 of his targets came from the slot. That was the most routes that Jauan Jennings has ran from the slot since, I believe, before the 49ers bye week. So I think that's a good spot for him. I mean, like 90 yards, 2 touchdowns. It seems like a good spot. And then I saw one of his plays, I think the one that looked like it was like underthrown, right? Because he had to like stop for it along the right sideline. That one, he was lined up against a linebacker on that play. I mean, so good play calling by Kyle Shanahan there to get him on a mismatch and, get an easy play, quite frankly, for Jauan Jennings. Again, that's how you manufacture touches for your playmakers. Jennings and Kittle have been like the heart and soul of this team, like this season. So I think we haven't seen the last of those guys.
So awesome for Jauan, the year that he's having. Richard Sherman actually said it on his podcast, and they finally didn't blow a game where Jauan Jennings went off, right? Because every good game that he's had, we found a way to lose, and it like gets starting with the Super Bowl into the season, and it has a way of getting overshadowed. Third and Jauan, it's always big catches, or we have affectionately come to know him as Eurostep Jauan here on the 49K podcast. But you know what I think about Jauan Jennings, and I know this is going to sound like really like off the wall, but I don't know if anybody remembers when the 49ers drafted Chris Borland, the linebacker from Wisconsin, back in like 2014, 2015, whenever it was. And Mike Mayock, was giving his draft analysis, and he's like, too slow, too short, arms are too short. I don't care. The man can play football, right? Like that. He was like, ignore the criticism. The guy can play football. That's how I feel about Jauan Jennings. He's a little goofy out there. He looks a little awkward. He doesn't run the crispest routes. He's not a burner. The dude just plays football and a physical brand of football that fits with what this team's trying to do. And just like George Kittle, who we were just talking about, he does it all with a smile on his face. He truly loves the game of football, and he has been the 49ers' best receiver for the entirety of the 2024 season. Yeah, he's and this bodes well, right? He moved into the X position, Brandon Ayuk's position, out of necessity, not what he has played in his previous years with the 49ers. Now it's kind of like, well, Jesus, we can line this guy up all over the field, and he's especially in the slot where he's going to be a matchup issue for nickelbacks and especially for linebackers. Like I think they are building a monster out of Jauan Jennings right now, and I love it. I love it. He's worth every penny. His contract feels cheap for his production this year.
It definitely does. And like credit to Jauan, because like I feel like he's put in the work, and I think it's because he loves football, and that has like spilled into his game. Like you see the passion that he brings. So yeah, definitely Jauan, one of the fan favorites for good reason. Definitely another good nominee for us this week. I'm going to go with another offensive player here. I'm going to go with Isaac Guerendo because, hey, man, like coming in, your first NFL start, your rookie, after Christian McCaffrey goes down, and then after Jordan Mason goes down, like those are some pretty big shoes to fill for this offense. And you know that this offense runs through its run game. So for Isaac Guerendo, I feel like that's a lot of pressure, and I've mentioned it a couple of times. I mentioned it because I think it was kind of precious in a way that Guerendo was studying the playbook this week by himself, his alignments and all that, making sure he was on his P's and Q's. And I thought he looked pretty good in this game. He had 2 touchdowns of his own, 15 carries. He had 2 catches, 78 rushing yards, 50 receiving yards. The one critique I'll have on Isaac Guerendo, which has been the critique for, since we've seen him, is pass pro, right? Like that has to improve. And I think it will improve by him getting more playing time. But he's a baller. Like with the ball in his hands, he's going to continue to look good. And yeah, it was nice to see him get involved in the pass game too early on in the game, because I do think that's a skill set that he'll be good on as well.
Yeah. Isaac Grando, thank you for your 27-point performance in fantasy football as well. That was tremendous in one of my leagues this past week. What a bright spot, huh? Like just another guy found. I mean, I think there was a lot of, our pundits that represent the 49ers that were high on him and his athletic ability and felt like he would be a nice fit here. But it was just a matter of like, is there enough ball to go around? Like between McCaffrey, we didn't know what his status was after the draft in May, you didn't with JP, Elijah, like you're just like, okay, is this like wasted draft capital? Where does he fit into the equation? And it's shaken out that we've gotten the opportunity to see him on the field, and he hasn't disappointed. I agree. I think technique wise in pass protection, certainly an opportunity for some tremendous improvement, but it's not from a lack of willingness. He's a willing participant in pass pro. I mean, there was a highlight where he got destroyed by one of the Bers linebackers, but he stuck his nose in there. And just by sticking your nose in there, sometimes that's just enough to be able to get, and that's an attitude and that's a mentality. And a lot to like about him. God, I really hope his foot's okay and he's able to get out there on Thursday, because no knock on Patrick Taylor, but I think if you want to beat the Rams, you need somebody that gives you the big play ability. And that's what Garando is. But yeah, what a game, both passing and obviously or receiving and on the ground. And I think that goes well for Kyle Shanahan, because again, it goes back to just call the play. Just call the play. And that's why you can do so many different things with Christian McCaffrey on the field. And I am not comparing Isaac Garando to Christian McCaffrey. I want to be very clear about this. But when you prove to be competent in the passing game, then Kyle can get into his whole playbook, because it doesn't matter. If the check down is there, you take the check down, because CMC is going to make some people miss. You might get lucky and know that Garando is going to pull away from the pack if there's enough green there to do things. I think, again, all bodes well to the confidence of the play caller on the sideline. He had a tremendous game. God, that spells trouble for maybe Jordan Mason, who just had this tremendous year go forward because of his contract status. But nonetheless, we're talking about this week, Isaac Garando. Absolutely. If his name didn't come out of your mouth, it was 100% coming out of mine.
Well, who is going to come out of your mouth now? Because I'm going to kick it on.
I got to get off. Yeah, I got to get off the offensive side of the ball here.
All right, let's do it.
I'm going to the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah.
What did we say has been a problem with or without Nick Bosa in the lineup?
No pressure.
No pressure. More importantly, getting home. You know what I mean? And sacks tend to be drive killers, game-changing plays. And Yetur Gross-Matos, YGM, he had 3 sacks in this game yesterday, and that's 7 collectively as a defense. Yeah. I don't even have to look to know that that's got to be their highest output of the season so far in a single game. But awesome to see. Defense looks a lot different when the defensive line is able to get pressure and get home and create mismatches. And I just, he did it what? He's 3 sacks, 20 total, 19 pass rush snaps, right? So winning at a 14% clip there, that's a really high number when all is said and done. And I just thought he 3 sack game. It's hard not to acknowledge when we have had gone many games without sacks in a player here. Yeah. I just got 3. Big time when you're trying to create pressure. He's playing for some things. He was a free agent acquisition, and he hasn't lived up to the billing, hasn't been on the field a whole lot. So good game for YGM for sure.
Yeah, and it's been nice to see him come along and, in my eyes, improve with each week, get more comfortable with the defense. I do think the defense as a whole looked a hell of a lot more comfortable on Sunday, and I hope that continues. I hope it wasn't just the fact that they were playing the Bears, but I think, again, speaking of the cohesiveness of this team, a lot of that came from the defense as well. So yeah, shout out to them. But Yetur Gross-Matos, 3 sacks. I know that Caleb Williams, the most sacked quarterback in the league this season. But man, I think again, the fact that, without Nick Bosa, you struggle to get pressures. I was still very much surprised, I got to say, like by the defense getting 7 sacks, just because we hadn't seen it really. So it was a nice change to see. Four total pressures from Gross Matos as well, and Hurry 4 total stops. So I mean, he was wrecking some things, and for a quarterback who, has that mobile ability, I do think he does hold on to the ball a long time in the pocket. But, still he could run if he wants to. I think that also, is a good thing for the defense that they got to see that and they still had success against that. So, yeah, hopefully.
When they struggle against that. I mean, that is like a known thing. Any mobile quarterback. And that's why I'm so perplexed about Caleb Williams and like being the most sacked, because wasn't he was like boasted as a magician like Patrick Mahomes, right? You think you have him, but you don't, and boom, touchdown, right? And I know this is the NFL versus the Pac-12, but when all said and done, 7 sacks, like you're right. And that changes the entire like complexion of what Nick Sorensen can call with his defense when you're getting pressure. Changes everything.
True. Yeah, as far as the defense, that was the name I was going to mention as well. I just have one more nominee, Weston.
Fine by me.
If you don't mind.
It's your show.
Do you have any more?
No, just some flowers.
I got plenty of flowers too this week. All right, so last nominee for 49K Player of the Week, Brock Purdy. I do got to give him some props. I think obviously being in much favorable conditions, being another week removed from his shoulder injury, not being in the cold, he was back in Santa Clara. He looked like his old self too. And I think not just from the standpoint of his arm, right, but also just the comfort level that he had in this game looked like the 2023 version. He wasn't holding on to the ball too long. He didn't scramble in this game, and certainly not unnecessarily. I thought he was moving in the pocket very well. Like he just had a tremendous feel for the pocket. He was bouncing around in there and finding guys downfield. I do think, the Bears playing zone defense did help the 49ers offense get in the groove. Brock Purdy especially, 20 of 25, 325 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks, passer rating of 145.4. And especially in the first half in Bears territory, he was 9 of 9, 132 passing yards, 2 touchdowns. So when you talk about the 49ers not just getting into the red zone, but also like being able to finish in this game, I think Purdy had something to do with that in this game. I thought he looked pretty sharp.
Yeah, it's a point of contention for me. My wife, who watches the show, and she was asking me who's it going to be. And shout out to my son Landon, because I know he's watching. They all wanted me to nominate Brock Purdy, and I didn't want to do it. And I'm going to get crucified for this stuff. Thank God I have no following. I guess when all said and done, there's fewer crucifixions that can come my way. But that being said, Brock did great at executing what was in front of him and not trying to do too much. In my eyes, there was a few things that I saw that felt like really special. Like, oh, yeah, good reminder. He can do that. He does have that ability. But I do think his performance was more of a product of Kyle Shanahan simplifying it, getting the right plays in front of him, and just more about find the open person. Yes, he still did some Brock things. He still bought some time. He did that. He made one throw that was unbelievable that I'm not sure if anybody's, I'm sure a few people, if I went on social media, are talking about it, where like a full pump fake and didn't fumble the ball like most quarterbacks in the NFL do, and then still barely set his feet and find Kittle over the middle. Like that's a difficult task. That's a special talent that it takes to do that, or at least a special play in that moment. And I know I'm going to get crucified because I am not the person who says that any quarterback can play in Kyle Shanahan's offense and he can do this with anybody, because I do not believe this. But I do believe in this game, it was let's get back to works, allow the play action. Like we barely seen play action in this game.
Hit the easy button.
Yeah, guys, like I said, we were our own biggest roadblock this entire season, and obstacle was ourselves. And when I say ourselves, I mean them, but obviously we play for the team, Steph. Nobody appreciates that element of our commitment. But it just felt like this was just as much of Brock's performance I will put in Kyle's hands, because I think he just simplified it. And then when you don't and just play the game and take what they give you, and we'll call a couple, plays, and he just had all the complements working, and that's what it looked like. And I want to see more of that, because I think what Brock is special at is excelling in Kyle's offense, trusting his play caller, not thinking I have to go win the game. I have to save the world, because that's when bad things happen. He executed flawlessly. At one point in this game, he had a perfect quarterback rating. That is a difficult thing to do at the elite level in the league. But at the end of the day, while he played a good game, I'm just using this as an excuse to remind everybody out there that Kyle Shanahan still is actually a fucking fan. Jeez, I'm so sorry on your show. Fantastic play caller. I'm so sorry, Steph. Sometimes get a little excited.
I swear on this show.
I know, but it's your channel. It's your channel. I don't want to do that ever to you. But,
okay.
But he's a darn good play caller.
You
know what I mean?
No, he is. And I think that's what was so frustrating, is because I think we know this type of offense was on the table for this team, and we just hadn't seen it. The easy button, right? Making things easy for Brock. I think much of 2023, this offense was easy for Brock in the sense that, one, you had all these superstars around him, but also the play calling and just the scheme made it so Brock could think less, right? And I think that's good for Brock. I think at this point, we know what his limitations are. And I think putting him in those favorable positions is going to be what works, and if you know what those things are, then you can work with that. So yeah, in this game, I think it looked like how it's supposed to look. When Brock looks good, it's going to be in certain conditions. And I'm okay with that. If the 49ers can win games and my quarterback looks good, doing it, I don't care. Right. Don't care. That's just the circumstances that we're in. And yeah, he did fine in this game. So, all right, we've got our 49K Player of the Week nominees. So everyone in the live chat, go and put your vote in. We got George Kittle. We got Jawan Jennings. We've got Isaac Garendo, Yetur Gross-Matos, and Brock Purdy. And let me get to a couple questions, because there are a couple questions why you guys vote. Steve-O asked, so Kyle didn't call one good scheme all year. No, I don't think that. And I'm definitely not saying that. I think early on in the year, there were a lot of other things that contributed to lack of production from this offense that wasn't just scheme or play calling related. I do think a lot of it had to do with execution was not good from the players. I can point to several games in which the execution wasn't good, especially from run blocking, which we talk about the run being such a huge part of this team. If you're not run blocking well and you're not running the ball well, you're not going to have success, especially this team in particular, especially Brock Purdy, right? So I think there's a lot of different things. I do think Kyle schemes up good plays, guys get open, but I do think Brock struggled in some areas early in the season when he was maybe asked to do too much. Kyle wasn't pressing the easy button for Brock. And I don't know if that has something to do with the fact of you want to see what he can do in other circumstances because you have to pay him after the season. I don't know. But I just think some of those easy plays, we're talking play action, we're talking screens, things like that, high percentage throws, we weren't seeing a lot of that. And some of that is on Brock. Some of that I think is on Kyle too. But yeah, no, I'm not saying he didn't call a good scheme all year.
This was just his best.
This was just his best. I think it was the entire team's best.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
For sure. All right. I know we had another question too. So let me get up to that. Question from Karen says, what do you think will happen with Dobbs next season? I'm a Dobbs fan. He will probably want to go somewhere that he can play. I imagine so. I think he, especially for backup quarterbacks, usually it's a 1-year deal and you're out, right? Yeah. Brandon Allen's probably the only exception there, probably because he knows he can't, this is the only place where a team will make him the backup quarterback and not the third probably, but
he's great. He's such a great story. He's such a, great for the NFL. He's great for the team. Like, there's, by all accounts, everybody just loves being around Josh Dobbs, and that's what's fantastic. And you love him. But if we're ever in this scenario where we're talking about our backup quarterback, our problems are misaligned, right? Like, the problem should always be the quarterback. And Karen, that is no slight on your question whatsoever. I think it's a great question. I just think the obvious thing is, backup quarterbacks tend to be a revolving door because they're football players with egos just like everybody else, and they want to go find a door that they can open where maybe they get a shot at playing. They put in all this work throughout the week. They want to put it on display on Sundays as well.
Especially in this team, I think at this point, some players are coming to San Francisco with the intention of, hey, if I just come here for one season, it'll change how teams perceive me. Yep. And, who knows, could be the next Sam Darnold story, reclamation project here in San Francisco. And yeah, maybe Dobbs is next, although he was the QB3. So I think that made it a little bit different for him. But I do still think he'll have an opportunity elsewhere as well, especially with a lot of injuries all across the league.
He's got another 10 years in him playing backup in this league if he wants. As long as you just stay healthy and accountable, you'll get a shot. Trust me.
That's the thing with backup quarterbacks. Like, you got it made, man. You really got it made.
Best position in all sports.
I mean, keep voting in the comments, people. I've seen a few, but keep it up. In the meantime, we're going to give some quick flowers to some players. I'll let you go first, Weston. Who you got?
I'm going to go back to the defensive line. And this is kind of like a little bit of a cop-out, but I want to loop in the entire front four. So we talked about like YGM before, but a little bit about Malik Collins, Jordan Elliott, even Leonard Floyd. I just thought everybody collectively played a good game across the front. And this is when this defense, the way this roster is constructed, regardless of who's coaching it, is when you can create pressure, be physical against the run with your front four. It changes everything that you are able to do as a defensive coach. And I candidly, I think they continued to mask the poor play that we're getting from the linebacker position right now. If I'm just being fully candid, those guys were able to hide a little bit better in this game on the defensive side of the ball because of the play of the defensive front.
Okay. Yeah. I think that's fair. I do think the defensive line looked great. I'm glad you gave like a collective one, because I was going to say Leonard Floyd. He did have 2 sacks in this game as well.
I didn't want to say collective because I was like, I'm stealing a name. I know I am and just being selfish here, but they all did play well.
Collective. Yeah, no, they did. They looked better. I think, like I said, the whole defense just looked a little bit better and, giving pressure. Like, we hadn't seen that all season, so I like that one. I do want to give some flowers to the undrafted free agents that we saw in this game for the 49ers. Evan Anderson, who's been starting for the last 2 weeks, and Patrick Taylor, who had to, he was on third down back duty, but he had to take over in this game when Isaac Guerrero exited. And, he had a couple runs. He had a touchdown as well in this game. So I just wanted to give some flowers to the undrafted free agents. Evan Anderson had the recovered fumble as well. So, yeah, I definitely think it's nice to give those guys some flowers. And I love that they're getting an opportunity.
Did you notice during the game where Evan Anderson's, what do they call the new helmet that they can wear?
Yeah, the Guardian
cap. When it was like broken, I was like, well, that's the first for me.
Was it ripped?
It like ripped, I think, down the side, and you're seeing like what this thing is constructed of, and he's still playing. And it's like you could see him from a mile away because that thing's just like flopping around. As he's
I don't know how I missed that. I'm going to have to
go
back and look.
I was so distracted. I was like, I can't take my eyes. It was the best thing that's ever happened to him. But the worst thing from a visual thing, I can't take my eyes off Evan Anderson right now.
Oh, my God. Yeah, the Guardian cap's bit of an eyesore, but keeping the players safe, so we like them. Yeah. All right, I'll also give one last flower to Spencer Burford, just because for the last couple weeks, like, you've been the third string guard on this team, basically.
Yep.
And because Ben Barch exited pretty early in the game too, with his injury, he played 25 snaps in this game. He allowed 1 pressure. And like what we always say about offensive linemen is I didn't notice him, right? Like, which is a good thing, especially like when you're that deep into your depth on your roster, right? So I think that was a great thing. The offense was still able to move the ball. The run blocking I thought looked fine, even with him still in there. So yeah, want to give him some acknowledgement and some flowers there as well. All right. All right. What are you going to say something about?
No, I was just going to say I'm feeling the same about Jalen Moore right now.
Yeah.
These guys that just been stepping up, doing what they're asked, not hearing their names called throughout the broadcast, which, to your point, the position that they play, it's a phenomenal thing, especially when we talk about who Jalen Moore has been replacing. And he's been battling out there, and he's been playing way beyond my expectations.
Yeah, for sure. And Jalen Moore is an interesting one because I think some people are thinking about Trent Williams, like what's going to happen with Trent, right? Like he hasn't played in a few weeks, dealing with personal stuff right now as well. Is he going to think about retirement? After this season, not sure. I know he did get a new extension before the season started. So God, we hope not. Right. But if there's a contingency plan for, Trent Williams, I mean, Jalen Moore's right there. Just a thought. And just thinking about some of the pending free agents for the 49ers. I don't think Jalen Moore is one of them. Aaron Banks is one of them, but just something to keep in the back of your mind for this team going forward.
I'm trying to look to see if he is. I don't think he.
Yeah, I just looked it up. He isn't. I think he probably has another year on his deal. Aaron Banks is the offensive lineman who will probably get a bag after this season, if we're being honest. Yeah. All right. Let's go ahead and check some of these votes for 49K Player of the Week. Weston, who do you have?
George Kittle.
I also have George Kittle. I mean, that to me, like that's just it's so easy, and he kind of called it, right? Like he is calling his number this whole week, just kind of talking about, he feels like he's open. Yes, sir, you are open, and you should get the ball. Like if it were possible to give a player the ball on every snap besides the quarterback, like I'd be voting for George Kittle. So yeah, definitely a good one for 49K Player of the Week. Week 14. Before we head on out of here, did want to talk about the injuries that we're going to be tracking this week. Seen a couple questions about, Isaac Guerendo. He has a foot sprain, right? It seems like it's mild. He's going to be day-to-day this week, but obviously the 49ers play on Thursday, so that's going to make it pretty tough for him to, potentially be able to play that game. He's going to be evaluated throughout the week. I wouldn't expect him to practice, tomorrow or the day after that. Like it might be one of those situations where he doesn't practice all week, game time decision for Thursday if they're lucky, and maybe he can go. But yeah, we're going to keep an eye on Guerendo throughout this week. Obviously would be most ideal if he does play. Now for Ben Bartch, he wasn't as lucky. He got a high ankle sprain, and obviously that effectively ends the season. He's going to be placed on IR sometime this week. The good news is Aaron Banks, who was missed the last 2 games with concussion, game and a half, he cleared the concussion protocol, so he is slated to take over as the starter once again on Thursday. Malik Mustafa, who exited, I think, a few snaps in this game with a chest injury. He's day-to-day. So we'll see if he can practice this week. As for Nick Bosa and Trent Williams, they're also kind of on the same boat as last week, going to be evaluated throughout the week, see how they do. Obviously, it would be big if at least Bosa could play in this game. And as for Greenlaw, he has a chance to play, bearing any setbacks. So they're going to be keeping an eye on him in practice this week, monitoring how that Achilles is feeling. And it would be such an exciting feeling to get Greenlaw back in the fold for this defense. Like I can't even imagine how much of a boost, just like from the energy standpoint, that's going to give. Hufanga even coming back just seemed to help this defense out a little bit too. So I can't even imagine Greenlaw being back, what that would do.
I'm on the fence here so much with this one, Steph, because I feel like if you're not playing for anything, I am a big proponent of prioritizing Dre Greenlaw services in the offseason and bringing him back, letting him get that full year of rest or the redshirt year. So he's not taking the physical tolls on his body and properly recovering. But it's hard because you're up against a window, right? You have to activate him by a certain time. So you can't just say,
Yep.
hey, do I want to wait and see if we get into the playoffs, and then we can activate him because the window will close by then because it's already been open. I don't know. Like, as the fan, I so badly want to see Dre Greenlaw back on the field, even if it's for like a snap. But like, if I put my GM hat on for a minute here, I'm like, is it worth that? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see, right? I think that's part of the reason why the team has been somewhat non-committal. Like, I think opening a player's practice window doesn't necessarily mean he's coming back. Like, that isn't a guarantee. We saw John Feliciano not return after having his practice window open. So I do think they're kind of weighing some things as well. But you have to remember too, Greenlaw is a free agent after this season. So for Greenlaw, I'm sure he wants to get out there and, show teams, 49ers included, that, hey, like I feel good. I think I'll play good. So I think for him, it's kind of an audition of sorts. But yeah, I think definitely some things to weigh as the season comes to a close. I do think that's kind of what they're thinking for Trent. That's kind of what they're thinking for Bosa as well, right? So we'll see what happens. But yeah, these next couple of days for Greenlaw, Garendo as well, going to be really important. So keep an eye on the practice report this week. Man, what a good vibe on a Monday. It is Victory Monday after all. And, the Monday Night Football is going to be the Simpsons stream if you guys are into that at all on ESPN. So Weston's skeptical. But
I know some people we know in common
you know?
who are very excited about this. But I am not one. I am sorry.
The Simpsons crowd, definitely excited for this one. But yeah, thank you guys so much for checking out the show today. Everyone in the live chat, keeping it popping. Make sure you like this video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Not just mine, but Weston's as well. Island 49, if you haven't checked it out. Audio listeners, leave a rating, leave a review. But for now, folks, have a good rest of your Monday. Peace.